got Tom here, and yo, the chat's already fired up. And y'all are already excited. So before we do that, I need to know a couple things. Number one is, where are you tuning in from? That's always very interesting to see. And two is, it's only Tuesday, but do you have a highlight of your week so far? If you want to share with us, that'd be fantastic. But one, tell us where you're tuning in from.
Wow.
Two, highlight of the week, if you have it. If you have it. All right. So let's shout out a couple places that we see here. Wow. Okay. Brazil. Brazil, Belgium. We got the whole world in here. Hold up.
Wales? Like, all right.
Wales. We got Germany in the building.
We got somebody from Phoenix. That was cool to see.
So we got ATL. Okay. We're repping. We showed up. Scotland, Maryland. No AZ, though.
Yeah. Emmanuel Cruz. He's down in Phoenix. We're talking about the rain. We're getting rained on right now. Pretty bad.
Yeah. Ben's like, yo, literally everywhere. Yeah. Like, yeah, we have everyone in here. Like, like across the board.
We're global.
We got a Phoenix. We got a Phoenix. Reading. Southern Reading.
We got Mr. Worldwide with us here. Morgan Ingram, Mr. Worldwide.
You know, I'm not Pitbull, but you know, we try our best. So, all right, y'all are here for cold calling, not to see where everyone's at, even though it's cool to see. Before we do that, I want to get a pulse check of who has been to one of these cold calling lives with Cognizant before. If you have, put a 1 in the chat. If you've never been here before at all, put a 2 in the chat. So I want to see where we're at. So what are we doing today, right? What are we doing today? Today, we are going to go over 1 cold calling framework from Tom, 1 cold calling framework from me, and then we will go into some live cold calls. So how this is going to work, I'll go ahead and preface it for you. If you want to come up live and talk to Tom and I on a cold call framework you're working on, you're going to come up and do that. You're going to mock cold call us as if we're one of the prospects. You tell us how you're making your calls today, and we will grade you live. So don't be nervous, but we will grade you live. All right, that's what's going to happen. So, okay, so we have some newcomers. We have some returners. That's fantastic. But before we do that, let's go into intros. So, and if you want to go live, all you do is click the video Q&A, and it should allow you to wait in the queue. But let's introduce our guest here. Tom, talk to us. What are you about? What's going on? And then we'll dive into it.
Absolutely, man. So I'm a 16-year sales vet. Been in the game since 2007. Made over 500,000 cold calls and counting. Coached hundreds of reps on it. I'm the founder and CEO now of my own company called the SD Lab, where we help organizations establish and set up their own outbound internal teams. And then we also do a done-for-you appointment setting service. So everything top of funnel. And then I also am officially a LinkedIn top voice and a LinkedIn top 20 sales insider. So been building my brand over there as well. So yeah, I'm excited to be here with you, returning once again. We've been doing this for many years now. So it's always a good time with you. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, welcome Tom to the show. Y'all give him a, I don't know, round. Can you do round of applause emojis in the chat? Give him a round of applause emojis in the chat if you can. And then I'm your host, Morgan J Ingram here. Founder of AMP. We do unconventional strategies, content strategies to help you build your pipeline goals. And then also I do sales coaching as well, and a creative advisor at Cognizant, which is why I'm the host. That's why I'm here. So hey, you got some love in the chat. That cat's kind of scary. That cat's kind of scary. But you got some love in the chat. You got some love in the chat. So what are we going to learn today? So the first thing, I'm going to go over my PAQ method. Tom's got his RISE method. I don't know what that's about, but he's got his RISE method. And then we're going to get live feedback from some calls. So first and foremost, let's go over the PAQ method. Now, as we dive into this, a question for you all. A question. On a scale to 1 to 5, 1 being absolutely terrible, 5 being you're flawless, how would you rate your objection handling skills? 1 to 5 on a cold call. Let's see. Oh, Remus says 5. Remus 5. All right. Whoa, 5. Hey, we out here. All right. So mostly we see some 2s. Yeah, if you're 5, hey, I don't know why you're here. You know, to be fair, like, you know, but hey, you always can learn, I guess. I guess you could always learn. You could always be more flawless. So we got mostly 2s and 3s here. So my goal with this method is once you hear it, you will be 0.5 better than what you currently are. 0.5 better than what you currently are. That's all I got to say. 0.5. I can't give you a whole point, but just 0.5.
Wow.
0.5. Wow. That's all I'm asking for. 0.5. Wow. All right, y'all can give me 0.5. All right. So when you face an objection, what should you do? Now, this is going to sound so simple, yet it is hard to execute. I've been an SDR, made thousands of calls, still coach people on these calls, and this is hard to do because in the moment, y'all know how it is, deer in headlights. You're like, wait, objection. I want to hang up. I don't want to talk to anybody, right? So pause, acknowledge, question. So let's talk about the pause. For everyone here, from 1 to 4, if you're a 5, again, you got this. 1 to 4, I want you, would you get an objection? I want you to pause. And if you want the approximate seconds, you want to pause for about 1 to 1.5 seconds. Now, what does that do? 3 things happen when you do this. And if you have done this before, you could co-sign me in the chat. But if you've never done this before, this is what happens. Number 1 is when you pause, the prospect sometimes answers their own objection due to the silence. It's very interesting. So they may throw an objection out there. You pause so that you can collect your thoughts and come with something thoughtful. That's just what we're going to do here. But what we have found is that when you pause, the prospect themselves will sometimes actually answer their own objection. So that's why the pause is important. That silence most people don't like, so they want to fill it with something. That's why you do that pause. The second thing is it allows you to get your measure, right? And what do I mean by getting your measure? It allows you to answer in confidence and clarity instead of confusion and disarray. Most people, when they get an objection, I've been there. You get an objection, you're like, oh, well, oh, like you're scrambling and you sign high pitch. It's all over the place. You don't want that. That's why we have this pause to collect our thoughts. And then 3, it then allows you, right? Half an hour. Yeah, half an hour, you're going to get hung up on a cold call. But then 3 is it allows you to understand what the person actually said. Because sometimes you might get an objection and you may just be like, oh, why am I getting an objection? I feel upset. No, you need to pause so that you can get your composure. Again, 1 to 1.5 seconds. Then acknowledge. So whatever they say, you want to acknowledge it. So if they said, hey, reach out to me in 6 months, you want to say, okay, yeah, I hear you that you want to get reached out to 6 months. You always want to acknowledge what they say. If you ignore it, right, that's not gonna help you, right? And then the last part is the question. Most of the objections that you face, you want to ask a question because the objection that you're getting is not the real objection. It typically is a surface level objection or it's a brush off. So we want to ask a question to get to the real root of why they're pushing us off. So I'll give you all a prime example. So some of you may face this objection. Reach out to me in 6 months. Let me know in the chat you've heard this one in the last, 2 days. Like if you've heard this one, reach out to me in 6 months, right? You probably heard this one a lot, right? So the best way to handle that, right, is pause, right? You pause and be like, okay. You say, hey, yeah, I hear you might want to reach out in 6 months. I know there's a lot of things going on. And then the follow-up question to there would be like, what's going to change between now and then? Good question. So now they're gonna answer you, and they're gonna have to be like, oh well, this is gonna change, or maybe nothing, right? It could be a brush off, and they're just saying 6 months, which ironically every prospect says 6 months. It's never like 3 or 4; it's always 6. So you ask them that question, and then now you get an answer, and you can unpack it from there, and you follow this PAQ method over and over and over again, right, until you get to the root of the answer and drive them forward. So that's the PAQ method. So hopefully, you all said, okay, that's something I can go try. If you're already doing it, fantastic. But really, this is just the fundamentals of how to get better with any objection that you face. PAQ is the way to go. Now it's your turn, Tom. We're going to talk about your framework.
I was just going to add a thought to yours too. If they say, 6 months, you can also say that's good. In the meantime, what are you prioritizing and what's kind of been on the top of the plate right now? Because then you can uncover, especially if you have a multi solution or service that has a couple arms to it. People always go in with one thing, but you can start uncovering through the PAQ other avenues, right? They're like, oh, well, It's not really media right now, but we are trying to, improve our conversions in our events, right? So we're not looking at content, but we are looking at, micro events that we're doing. Oh, interesting you bring that up. What is it about events that's been working for you? Now all of a sudden you're starting to, PAQ that way to where now you're like, hey, AMP does that, right? Did you know that? And you're like, oh, no, I didn't. Talk to me about that. Now you've extended that conversation another, 5-10 minutes. and you're starting to get somewhere. So I tend to do that
100%.
one too, of like, okay, cool, 6 months for this. What is it? And then you're coming from like a consultative approach or a helpful approach of like, okay, cool. I'm not selfish. I'm not worried about my goals. What are you tackling? Maybe somebody in my network. Maybe there's something I could do for you. Maybe I have a resource for you. What is then, something in the next 6 months that really is, the burning the fire right now. And now you could be helpful and continue to nurture that. And then your follow-up isn't so airy and fluffy. You continue to drill on that, check in with them, see how they're migrating that. Did they reach out to that intro you gave them? Now you're kind of having that conversation, and you earn trust and credibility with them.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic point. Hopefully you wrote that down, that, a big part of this, right? Building credibility, building trust, and those are key elements. And as we go into your formula, Tom, we see the chat, it's rolling, keeping us laughing here. If y'all have questions, toss them into the text Q&A, because we will answer questions as well. So if you don't want to go on video, throw in your questions in the text Q&A as we're talking, if you have pieces. Now, Tom, talk about your framework.
Yep. So I have a fresh new one that I kind of broke down what's always worked for me, over 500,000 calls, kind of what in my career has worked. And this is more on opening a conversation and diving into it as a whole. So it's called RISE: Rapport, Inquire, Solve, Engage. And so what that means is your R is starting off on rapport. You're opening the call with something personal, something cool they've done recently. It shows that you're actually paying attention. You kind of know their world a little bit, and you immediately connect with them on that level. Because once you could do that, they're more willing to kind of have a conversation with you. So you're bringing up a piece of content, you're trying to build something there that shows you're paying attention to what they're doing. 2, you jump into curiosity, which is that in inquiring. And so you're going to throw questions at them, open up the dialogue with something that gets them to really open up and say, this is what we're doing. So example would be, hey, this is Tom with the SD Lab. I had seen you're putting down some growth in the company. You've had about a 12% increase over the last 4 months. Out of curiosity, what are some pains that you've discovered while doing that growth? Or are there things that you've seen work really well as you've been scaling? Mm-hmm. Now I'm inquiring, I'm bringing a natural curiosity. It's a relevant question and it's open-ended. So now they're just going to talk. And going back to your point, I'm going to pause. And if I have to mute myself so I can kind of engage with them, but without interrupting, I'll do that as well. But ask your question and stop talking. Too many people over elaborate. They keep adding on to the question. Just, hey, what are you seeing in that growth that has worked well for you? Or what are some things you've seen that have been some hurdles?
Yeah.
Quiet. Then as you're doing those questions and you're kind of digging in and asking great follow-up questions, then you move into solve. Now you're going to show them a quick win, a little story, maybe a neat trick that's up your sleeve. They're saying, hey, in our growth challenges, we've seen, the team is kind of all doing their same own thing. We can't really get the growth to replicate the intimacy of the team we had when we only had 4. Now we have 8. It's kind of all sporadic. Hey, Morgan, that's actually really interesting you bring that up. I was actually working with a client, or I've seen some other sales leaders bring that up. And one thing that they've done during all of that is they've unified it through a playbook. Is that something you've put together before you scaled, or is that something you're building right now? Right now, they're like, oh man, that's a cool little, it's insight. You're being consultative, you're adding on, you're showing them, their world. Then you move into engage, the E, and that's action. Now you're going to propose a clear next step that feels collaborative. So, you want them to see value in the exchange. It's not, hey, let's get on a demo, let's get on a meeting. It's more of, if this strikes a chord, Morgan, if you're kind of seeing that this pain in growing your team, perhaps there's a conversation to be had about how the SD Lab might be able to support you in a similar way that we've done with some others. Could we pencil in a brief chat to explore this maybe next week at 2:00? Does that sound fair to you? And you then engage them in that action. So it's really about, building the rapport, bringing natural curiosity, engaging with relevant questions. And then once you see that pain that is really relevant to what your value prop should be, or somewhere in there, that's when you then bring up the value prop. Now, if you notice, I didn't say my value prop in the beginning. I'm not even really talking about the company. I'm waiting for that moment through my active listening, through the discovery of my questions, to be like, There it is, Morgan. So you just mentioned growth and having a problem with everybody on a different page there. Let me ask you leading questions that make you feel like you're in control. You're dictating the way this convo goes, but I clearly know your answer and I know where I want this to go. I want you to say you don't have a playbook. I want you to say this or that, because that's going to be my moment to be like, you know what, Morgan? That's why I kind of reached out. Some orgs have been growing and are not putting together playbooks. This is what we've seen once we've developed for the companies. You know, could we pencil in some time to chat and maybe we could take that off your plate and show you how we can get that team all in alignment to where you're seeing that success. And then you could scale once more without those hiccups. Would that be something that you'd be open to? And so that's kind of the RISE method. When you're attacking your calls, it's not a template. It's not a script. It's more of a concept for you that, you know, build in rapport when you come in, inquire with curiosity, look for where you can solve. And then once you see that solve, go right into your engage, and your calls will rise up and they will be longer and more enriched. And you'll see more people taking action with you to book that call.
Perfect. Hopefully y'all took notes on that one. Write that down. I think that's a really great framework there. And I think what we're going to do here is answer a couple questions here, Tom. So I think we have one from give an example of going personal. I think you explained that a little bit as well, but if you want to dive maybe a little bit more into that that piece there.
Which part?
Right here. Can you give an example of going personal in a cold call? So I guess, like, is that from getting something from their LinkedIn website, all the stuff that you said? That's essentially what going personal is, right? Is there, I guess, being too personal too? Maybe that's helpful for some people out there as well.
I don't know how we always get into this with you and I, but it's going to go back to team research, your favorite thing, right?
We're laughing because I'm actually no research before our call. I know some of you are like,
I go in blind.
I have a different premise. No, okay, we'll explain it because they're like, no research. I'll explain it, but continue.
But, you know, when you're doing your research in behind scenes, right? Like in my CRM, I'm kind of looking at 3 things as to why I'm even calling this person. What are 3? And it's not personal to Morgan. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes your prospects don't even live on social, so you're not getting anything from them, no matter what the gurus tell you and what people want you to do. They're just not there. So you can go to the company website. You can look at analytics in Sales Nav and kind of understand if there's company movements, anything that kind of is like a buying trigger, sales intent data that just shows that you give that word, right? That just shows like, hey, look, I'm not blindly calling you. Now, I'm not saying research before a call and dive into this rabbit hole. It's usually 3 pieces of information in under 3 minutes. I do it after hours. I usually set an admin hour, or if I'm at the dinner table, I'll go through some accounts that I've been trying to reach out to and find some ways to be super relevant and personal. So then in my opener, it's like, hey, Morgan, Tom with the SD Lab. The reason for my call is I was checking out your website and I've seen this, or, hey, I've seen your post actually earlier today, Morgan, around cold calling in the streets, man. What kind of inspired you to do that? And then now we're getting personal. We're building some rapport. You're going to want to talk about yourself. And then from there, it's like, cool. That's why I called. I saw your video editing in there. You know, who's doing that? Is that something you do manually? Do you have a team? If I'm reaching out about that service, right? Or that offering. So it's just finding ways to not be personal in this way of, hey, man, I see that, you know, you got a dog, right? Love that. It's personal to their world. I tell SDRs all the time, like, your skills as an SDR are not who you are. They're just the skill set. You need to be your buyer persona every single day you come in. Choose a job you absolutely love, a space that you absolutely adore. You, founder of AMP, do you know why you succeed there? Because you love the space of media, period. Whether that's what you were doing in your day-to-day or not, you're in that space. You're watching the YouTubes. You're studying the game of those people because it excites you, right? So then when you go on calls with people, you're an expert. You've got insights to share. You're bringing in those quick wins. You're like, oh, I was watching Mr. Beast last week, and I seen maybe this is something you could do on your videos. You know, have you tried to replicate that? I haven't, Morgan. That's brilliant. Yeah, I'm kind of nerd out on this stuff, right? And I just seen in your videos, this one little edit in your thumbnail probably could get your engagement half a point, right? Try it out for me and let me know what that does. Now they go try that. They get a win. Now we're conversating, and then they trust you. So it's just being personal and relevant to their world, building that rapport with them to where that guard comes down, man. And you got to do it in 30 to 45 seconds. And the best way to do that is make somebody feel good. let them talk about themselves. If I come in with a compliment to Morgan in the first few seconds of a phone call that's super relevant, I can have Morgan talking to me for the next 5 to 10 minutes, right? Because he's cool. He's got a boost of dopamine versus the typical call, which is, hey, Morgan, I work with the SD lab. What we do is we help companies do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at some of the best salespersons in the world, they're really good at making connections, and they're really good at just knowing the world of who they're talking to. Sell me this pen. Understand why the pen even matters in the first place. It's not just walking in and giving the pen. Want to sell ice to an Eskimo? Why the heck would they want the ice if it's all around them, right? Like, build that with them and kind of uncover that. And that's what it's about.
That's a good piece there. So we're going to answer this question, and then we're going to go to the video. So if you want to come live and do a cold call, please go to the video Q&A. And if you have additional questions, please put them in the Q&A because it may get lost in the chat. So our org uses an auto dialer to make 300 calls a day. How would you make something personal with such a high volume based approach? Okay, so I don't know which tool you have. I don't really need to know. But the thing is, it depends what the auto dialer you have, because some people are saying don't do it, whatever. Here's the contextual thing that all you need to understand is, if you know the persona, you can be relevant. That's what I say when I say, hey, don't do my take. Hot take. Some people guess me. It is what it is.
Here we go.
Is if you know the persona well enough, you don't have to do that much research. Because if you know what they do on a day-to-day basis, you've been having conversations every single day. If you know the persona well enough, you're going to be able to talk to anyone in any industry if you know it well enough. You don't have to do personalized. You don't have to look at the LinkedIn profile like, wait, what's this person's wearing glasses? Let me personalize to their glasses. Like, you don't need to do all that. Like, as long as you know the persona, you're good. And this is just speaking off like my own cold calling experience. Like, that's how I converted. I don't listen
to this, guys. Really bad.
I'm just telling you, if somebody is with me, like, great. If you're against me, it's cool. I'm just telling you what works. And so, anyways, so if you're doing a power dialer, and if you can at least see what the persona is, you need persona-based intros, and you need to know what their challenges and priorities are. So then in that intro, it then can help you have a contextual conversation. So if you know what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and you have an assumption, which most people that are cold callers are SDRs, you are talking to more people in that industry than most people do within a month or even a week. So if I can do that, then I can make sure that I'm actually getting from that person. So I would say, know what your personas are, know how to speak to those personas directly, and that will actually help you with that conversion and that connect rate from that perspective. So I just wanted to say that. Your opinion can be different before we let this person in, but that's my take.
I agree with you. I think, people don't realize you're talking to, on a good week, 10 to 15 people. If your data's right, all the company's empowering you to have those real conversations, right? You're talking to 10 to 15 people in that space. And if you're actually curious and actually genuinely love what you do, you're learning every day, regardless of booking a meeting or not. Just talking to that founder. I learn every week just talking to founders on what they're focused on, where their pains are, and then I can better my company offering, my positioning. And a way to get around that is just really intrigue them with a question right off the bat. Hey, Morgan, it's Tom with the SD Lab. Out of curiosity, I see you're the director there. You mind giving me a second and telling me, what is a priority and outbound for you at the moment? And then once they kind of get going, you can maybe look up some info on them. You can maybe get some rapport just by listening to them and then building off of that. They say, oh, we're working on this. You compliment them, whatnot. But again, you're talking to a lot of people. Leverage it, find stuff, get stories, find ways to be relevant. That's all personalization is. Personalization is not your dog, college, first name, all that nonsense.
All right, y'all. So we're going to go to the video Q&A, and I'm going to say this one more time. For everyone throwing questions in the chat, please put it in the text Q&A because it will be lost because we have to move on now. So please put it in the text Q&A so we can see it, and we're going to come back to it. Otherwise, it's just hard to find. So please do that for me so that it can be upvoted. People can find out which question we want to do. Please put it in the text Q&A if you have a question. Otherwise, it may be missed. I'm going to say that one more time so we're clear. All right, so let's bring in Roxy. We're going to bring Roxy here, and we're going to do a live cold call. So if you've been on this before, we do a live cold call with someone, as Roxy is going to come on video here. Hopefully it comes on here in a minute. And we're going to let her in. So what we do is we just break down who she calls, typically how she goes about it. One of us will be the prospect, and we go from there. But Roxy, I think I'll let you in, but if you're not able to come in, we might have a question here as we try to figure this out. Yeah, we'll just
Somebody asked about they asked what's a good call to connect rate. So a couple people asked that. So in your world, Morgan, what would you say is a good, for every dial
I don't like this question. I don't like this question. And I'm gonna tell you why. It's an unfair question because, for example, is anyone here calling education? So let me know in the chat if you call education. Or maybe not. So let me give you okay, a couple people do. Okay. Your education connect rate is like 80%. Some people are gonna feel on that, but like you're calling the public sector. So like if you're calling like higher education, like colleges and high schools, they're gonna pick up the phone, right? Because they think it's like, oh, it's a student, it's an easier connect rate, right? Versus like you call someone in IT and security, that's gonna be very low. They're not trying to, they're not trying to pick up a phone, right? And so that question is a little not unfair. It's just too industry dependent for me to give you an answer. So the best answer, to be transparent with you, is you need to look at what your overall connect rate is on your team. You should have that data somewhere on the team. It should tell you what your average connect rate is across the reps. And I go find out who has the top connect rate on the team, and I figure out what their connect rate is and figure out what they're doing. Because me giving you an answer based on industry standard is not going to set you up for success versus just asking people in your organization what exactly they're doing is going to give you the best answer. Because again, education, co-sign it. Like it's just going to be easier to have a connect rate in education than it is to IT and data. It just is. And what you should be focused on, the metric that everyone should be paying attention to, is your conversion rate once you actually get someone on the phone. That is what you should be focused on. So connect rate, yes, you can go get a power dialer. You can change the times that you call. A lot harder to gauge on those, but you need to figure out what your conversion rate is. Once you get someone that you're talking to, how are you converting that? That becomes a different conversation. But continue, Tom.
I was just going to ask you, what's the worst then? So if you can't really say a good example, what would be a red flag for somebody, regardless of industry or vertical, to where maybe cold calling actually isn't the channel for them? The connects are just not there. When would you consider a red flag to reevaluate your connect rate?
Look at that's a good question. So I think everything's on a basis of a 50 to 100 scale. So if you make 50 calls and one person picks up, then it's like, okay, we need to watch that. If you make 100 calls and one person picks up, that's when it's like, okay, we need to change something, right? Either you need to get a power dialer or you call people just to do voicemails, for example, right? You're gonna change that method a little bit. So that's effectively what I would be looking at in that regard. Everyone might be different. People can add their perspective in that as well. And that's the key there. And again, we just got this comment from Addy here is like, yeah, you just got to know your persona to understand what the connect rate will be and how you're going to communicate with them. So before I even answer questions, I'm like, also region too. It's region dependent. We have a lot of people in different places in the world. Like
UK loves the phone. Like the UK, those people love the phone, right? I hear different over there. They like to pick up the phone and talk to people, but in the US, they can't see the same impact. They're like, no, people don't like the phone.
Here's the crazier part. I don't know if y'all know this. And like, let's say India and Singapore, someplace in Southeast Asia, they don't even leave voicemails. Wow. They don't even leave voicemails. So it's like, so it's just different, right? So contextually, across the board, you have to really get an understanding of what those pieces is. Yeah. Tom, I actually don't know where that from.
I'm getting roasted.
So I wasn't gonna say anything, but I was like, it's not true. Like UK does not like cold calls, bro.
Really? That must have changed though, because I've worked in the UK, right? I had a team over there back from 2017 to 2020, obviously pre-COVID days. And then I had a team last summer. And honestly, we had better connect rates and conversations occurring on that side of the house than what we would in the US. Could be outdated information. So again, I apologize. Thank you all for correcting me. And apparently the UK is now joining the US, and it's like, yeah, don't call my phone. Like, what are y'all doing? And I think that's across the board, right? It's everybody doesn't like the phone anymore. But all right, y'all. I appreciate you keeping me humble. Thanks for educating me.
All right. So, if anyone, by the way, if anyone's coming video on live, we're waiting for someone to come live on the video. So submit your video Q&A if you want to come in. But if not, we'll just answer your questions. We'll vibe with y'all. So this question right here, I really like that we just put up on the screen here. the stats for leaving voice messages. All right. So this is really interesting. Stats for leaving voice messages. So some people said, nah, that ain't for me. Right. Okay. Some people said they like it. So let's get a pulse check. So how many people leave voicemails? How many people don't? So if you do, yeah, one if you do, two if you don't. Like, we'll see what's going on here. Okay, so I have a premise on this. I used to hate leaving voicemails. I thought they were a waste of time.
I'm shocked. I'm shook.
No, I thought they were a waste of time. I would only do ghost calls. I would literally just be like direct dial, and if it goes, y'all remember the phone? I should do, but like the phone trees where it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna connect you, and then like they don't at all. Like it ends up being like, yeah, I want to connect to like Andy Williams, and it connects me to like Sally Bobby or something, and it's like that's not even yeah, like what? So yeah, I was sick of it. I was like, only direct dials for me, right? And so I would actually never leave voicemails. But here's something that I learned over years of training and coaching people, that we found a way for voicemails to work, is that most people, when they leave a voicemail, what do? They say, call me back. Now let's gauge the chat. How many callbacks have y'all had in your career ever? Just in the chat, I'm curious. In your career ever, a callback. Someone actually called you back from your voicemail. Let's just see. I'm always curious on this. Typically, the answer, Tom, is like 2 to 8.
No. I've made a lot of them, and I could still count between my hands and my toes how many
typically it's 2 and 8. Yeah. So the reason that voicemails don't work is because you're asking for a callback, but no one's gonna call you back. Think of how crazy it is. You see the numbers, but everyone in the voicemail was like, yeah, like, call me back, but then you only have like 5 or 4. So that's insanity. Why would we do that? So we create this premise around, if I do a call, I leave a voicemail, but I don't tell them to call me back. So it would go like, hi, like, Tom, the reason for my voicemail is we've been working with VPs of marketing, and they're saying that they're struggling with their event activations, and we help people with their event activations so that they can get more booth traffic and conversions on their opportunities. And I'd say, hey, look, no need to call me back. I'm going to send you an email in the next 10 minutes with this subject line, whatever it was. And then I would just say, my name is Morgan Ingram from X. My name is Morgan Ingram from whatever company I was at. Now, the reason that works so well is because we would say, hey, there's no reason to call me back, which diffused the situation. It created a reverse psychology as well, because they were like, oh, wait, that's interesting. And it actually allowed for people to engage with us in a completely different way. So we actually saw an increase in email response rates by doing that, because we proactively told people to go check out this email. I actually believe that is the best way to leave a voicemail, rather than tell someone to call you back, because it won't work. But I don't know how you do it differently, but like, if you did that, you would just see an increase. And we actually got callbacks from that too, because it's like, no need to call me back, reverse psychology. People like, I want to call you now because you're not forcing me to call you. It's interesting. I don't know if you put your take on it.
I agree. I was anti-voicemail for a majority of my career. Back then, I don't think it was as necessary. People were not truly into voicemail. However, post-COVID, transcript, voice memo, this whole world of transcripts and all of that, I agree. My voicemail framework is the same as you. That's where I learned it from. We talked back in the Clubhouse days, right? Like, hey, no need to call me back. I'm going to shoot you a video. I'm going to drop that on your LinkedIn. I hope you see that. You want to use it to direct them to the next step. And as you said, that impacts, them going through the inbox and, hey, I'm going to send you an email titled SD Lab with Tom. Look out for that. Now they know what to look for, versus going into a sea of emails and just kind of Googling your name and researching your name. And if it comes up, they could go right to the inbox with that action and get back to you, right? Or go to LinkedIn and get that DM. My other point about this, and how many voicemails you should leave in a 15-touch cadence, a 20-point cadence, is I usually do 3 voicemails in a sequence now. And why I do that is because, number one, and you all tell me from being cold called or people reaching out to you all the time, how much of a percentage do you answer a phone call nowadays on the first try in the first place? Let's remove cold calling and just talk about in general. Somebody calls your phone right now. how likely are you to pick that up, right? Or percentage of the time are you to pick that up? I was a VP of sales last summer. I had probably in 5 months, 5 cold calls, and I had over 125 cold prospecting emails in a 5-month span as a VP. Okay, five cold calls, 125 emails. All the people that were cold calling me, except one, were burning through and doing the ghost dialing. Just every day, same number, whatnot, every couple of days. Now what I do is I cold call. If they don't pick up, I automatically leave that voicemail. Hey, it's Tom Slocum with the ST Lab. No need to call me back. Just thought I could reach you. I'm going to shoot you an email, see if that's a better channel to contact you on. I'll be in touch. Talk soon. Done. The next time I call, I have now increased my likelihood of them picking up. And that's what this one cold caller did in the time that they were prospecting me last summer. They left a voicemail. They told me who they were. The transcript came up on my phone, and now I have an idea. Now, some of you will go, I'm scared to do that. The rejection. Oh, God, they're going to block me for the next time. You've already lost a battle, and that's on you if you're already going into it with that mentality. That's already been beaten. Don't think like that. Leave value. Give them a reason to want to keep your number open. And if they block you, they were never a prospect to be working with really in the first place. Move on, right? Yeah, it's okay. Sure. But the likelihood of you calling now again in a couple of days, that number is registered in their brain. They're like, oh, yep, that's Sarah. Let me grab that real quick. Maybe I have the time. Or now I'll text Sarah back and be like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm in a meeting. Sorry I missed your call once more. Can you call me tomorrow at 3 o'clock? I'll be around. Then after that, kind of let the cycle run its course. Do your ghost dialing, try to reach out a few times. Then about midway through the funnel, around 7 to 9 touch, leave another voicemail. Now directing them to something. Hey, I was curious if you've seen that case study I shot over to you or that personalized video I dropped on your LinkedIn. Would love for you to check that out. Let me know what your thoughts are. I brought in a competitor, give them a competitor name. That'll trigger some stuff. They get curious. And then the last one is the voicemail that you leave when you're I don't call it breaking up. I call it, putting a pin in it. So I don't call it a breakup email or a breakup point. I call it putting a pin in it because that's what you're really doing. So it's like a last voicemail of, hey, Morgan, just putting a pin in this. Wanted to try to reach you one last time. Obviously not a priority at the moment for you. Haven't been able to really connect. If something changes, you know where to find me. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you. I dropped you an email with some few resources and a couple wins that I think you would find value in. But until next time, I'll talk to you soon. And then you're done. So I do about 3, and I always basically leave a voicemail on my first outreach cold call just because more people are not going to pick up nowadays than ever before. So you have to establish who you are. And 2, you now have a transcript in there with Apple iPhones and things like that. So it's a whole nother value add if you could just drop that in that transcript and let them read that.
Yeah, that's what I was in that last part is incredibly important because someone asked, like, do we know the percentage of people actually the voicemails? I don't even know if there's a tool out there that can track that. If there is, like, let us know, but I don't think that's possible. But the thing is that that's not the point. The point is that they're going to read the transcript. If you ask most people, do they listen to voicemails? They don't. They read it. So the goal that I'm telling people to go read an email is that they already are reading something. So it's easy to tell somebody to go do something that they're already doing. If they're reading a voicemail and then you tell them to call you back, it's not going to compete with their brain. But if I tell you, go read this thing or listen to the voicemail, whatever, they're reading the voicemail and then I tell them to go read the email, it's an easy translation for them to go do the next step. So when you leave a voicemail, it's actually not about them listening to it. It's about them reading it, which is the premise of why it's saying, let's go and check out that email. So I want to switch actually gears here because a couple of people have been asking about LinkedIn voice notes because it still plays into like voice notes as a whole. And so we're going to answer this. And we actually do have someone on deck for a live cold call. So we do have somebody on deck, but let's go into this. What are your views on voice notes for LinkedIn messages? I think it's underrated still, but Tom, what's your take?
Can I be honest, man? I've gotten torn lately. In the
okay, so man. not it. This isn't it.
No, I'm going to be dead honest with you. I love them. It is crazy to me that 5 years ago when I was at rep.com and I was at Milestone and people were doing these studies on voice search, like kind of taking over 80% and voice being this thing. It was crazy at that time because it was like, okay, I hated voice stuff. I was like, this is dumb. Like nobody's going to use their voice. It wasn't accurate. It kind of messed up. Now it's like light years ahead, and everybody does it. Everybody. And I think leaving voice notes on LinkedIn is game changer in your process because it can't be scaled. It can't be replicated yet. It is authentic as heck. It is your voice. You can take a complex, long novel of a LinkedIn message that you're about to send, an email, all that crap that's like a 500-word email, and turn it into a 60-second note and bring in some context to the complexity of what you're about to bring up or the conversation. Like literally, if you go into like Morgan's LinkedIn DM box or mine, we actually have conversations where there's not even one text written. It's all voice notes, like back and forth. I've closed a deal personally by just voice notes with a founder. Now, my sales cycle is different. I completely understand. But I did a deal where I didn't even get on a demo or discovery. We just hashed it out. I think it's a great way to stop asking people for 30 minutes, qualify, have a discussion, really talk it out, because it's easier for them to drop that voice note and go back and forth and kind of have that call without having that call. Something I've recently started trying, thanks to a post, and I feel bad for not being able to shout this person out, is going back to why I said I'm in between, is some people have said not everybody can listen. There are people, unfortunately, with that are disabled that might not be able to listen to a voice note. You need to be very sensitive to that and understanding your audience, that you might drop a voice note, they're not getting back to you because they can't listen to it. And people just don't always have the time and space. Do not send a voice note to Kevin Dorsey. Doesn't want them.
He doesn't like it at all.
No, it disrupts them. They don't have time to sit and play that out. So my new technique now, and it seems to be working with a small sample size, is I drop the voice note, and now I'm adding a 3-bullet point text cap, because the other complaint is you can't go back and reference things in the voice notes, right? If I'm going through 15 voice notes, I don't know where that note was. I don't know, and I shouldn't have to listen to the whole thing. So now what I do is I put a 3-bullet recap, of what that voice note was. So if they didn't get a chance to listen to the note, they can at least get an idea of what the note had in value, and then like an open-ended question to keep the dialogue going. And that's been my process now, so I can accommodate to both sides of this coin, and it's actually improved the conversations. I'm doing a little bit better in returns there, and people are liking that. And now they can go back and reference which note they need to reference based on those bullets. So that's my take on it. But I say go all in on them. Try them. You'll shake up your industry in certain verticals, and nobody's doing it. So it really sets you apart because you can't scale them.
All right, y'all. So we're gonna shift gears here, and we're gonna let in Ali.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. And before we go into this piece, Ali, I'm gonna let you know what we're about to ask you, which is who are you calling? How long you been cold calling? So think about that answer. But let's go back to the chat and let us know, has this been helpful for you so far? Let us know in the chat if it's been helpful for you so far. And yeah, I would recommend trying out voice notes for sure. Tom gave you a whole entire framework on the doing. I actually really like the bullet points you mentioned. I haven't even been doing that, so I actually really like that. I might use it. I might use it for my own personal life. Like, yo, here you go. Like,
it's just a recap real quick, and it helps them know if it'll stop them in their tracks to want to listen to it.
Yeah, that's actually a good call. I actually might do the same thing. But Ali, pleasure to have you. So typically, how we do this is you let us know, like I just said, who are you calling? How long you been calling? We'll ask some additional questions. We'll figure out who the persona is, and then you'll make the cold call.
Okay, sounds good. So I've been cold calling since about 2020. Typical persona would be VP of sales, head of sales. I'm a recruiter that places software sales reps, so BDRs, SDRs, AEs. So really anybody that would manage them depending on the size of the company. My target company is usually under 200 to 300 employees. So like more startup type companies.
Tom, this is literally you. This is actually you.
Yeah, this is. I've been in this space. I've played in this space. I have friends in this space. Yeah,
it's a great space. I love it.
It really, it's different. People say recruiters aren't salespeople, but they're completely wrong. It is a different beast and different animal. Calling those folks, Ali, major kudos to you. It is very different. As you probably heard a lot of this advice, you're like, okay, sure, but like not always, right? Recruiters are tough. They feel threatened with what you bring to the table sometimes more than they see value. because they think you're trying to replace them or do their job for them, right?
Yeah, I don't typically call into internal recruiters as much because I get a little bit more friction as far as trying to replace them when typically I just work hand in hand with them. So that I've seen a lot more success calling into like heads of sales. So I don't know if you have different feedback, but that's what I've seen the most success with.
100%. That's where you want to go, with kind of go around them, right? And get some candidates to where then they push that to the internal team and say, hey, we're working with Allie. We've had 3 great, because they're the ones that are going to end up with the end user, the end employee, right? So they care more than trying to go directly in there. All right, we can role play this out though.
So Allie, what you're going to do is you're just going to do ring, ring, ring. Tom will answer the phone and then you'll play it out. The goal is for you to schedule a meeting. But, you know, obviously once we end it, we'll give you feedback. Chat will give you feedback, and that will be the conclusion of the show. So, Alec, whenever you're ready.
Okay, sounds good. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Tom, it's Allie Collings. I know you were not expecting my call, but can I steal 30 seconds of your time to let you know why I'm reaching out? Promise to make it painless.
You've got 30 seconds. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm a recruiter with Alston Talent. I'm currently working with a phenomenal AE. He's hitting 120% of his quota. He has over 5 years of experience, and he's the top producer on his team. Is this the type of talent that you typically look for?
I really actually don't kind of oversee that as much. But yeah, you know, always looking for those A+ players that could come to the team and hit the ground running.
Okay, I see that you're the head of sales development. Do you typically handle the hiring process, or is that someone else on your team?
So I play a part in it. They'll meet with me.
Okay.
They'll talk with me. I'll do part of the interview. But ultimately, you know, that'll be with our internal team who would push those people across, and then, you know, we'll be notified if they're on our team or not.
Okay. Are you looking to build out your team right now, or is my timing completely off?
We're probably looking at, you know, 3 to 4 month run to where we might be looking to bring that in. Right now, we're just closing out the quarter, but yeah, about 3-4 months, we should be ready to bring on probably 5 more people.
Okay, 5 more people. Are you looking for like BDRs, AEs? What type of experience do you typically look for?
So we're doing a 2-3 split. So 2 SDRs, 3 AEs, and then yeah. So we're looking for that 5, and then we're just looking for people that, you know, have some experience. Not required, not at all. We have a really great enablement program, but we're just kind of, you know, trying to get some people that at least can hit the ground running. We have some pretty big audacious goals, so we need to get those 5 in. We're 1 down in AE, so that's why we need 3, and then those 2 SDRs will partner with the 2 new AEs from there.
Okay, and you said 2 or 3 months. Is that interviewing in 2 or 3 months, or is that you want somebody started in 2 or 3 months?
Kind of in between, but ideally have them in seat ready to go within about 90 days. So by 120 days, we have them kind of on their own, managing their sales funnel.
Okay, so are you interested in going ahead and, you know, seeing what's out there and maybe setting up some interviews? Because sometimes the interview process can take upwards of a month.
Not at the moment. I think we still have a little bit of time. We have some goals right at this very moment. We got to get this team pretty locked in. So, you know, I've got my peers kind of going after this at the moment. I probably won't step in probably for another 2 to 3 weeks before it comes on to my plate. But if you want to reach out about then maybe we could chat then.
Absolutely. I do not want to be bugging you to death or catch you at a bad time. Would it make sense to go ahead and get something on the schedule, maybe like mid-February, early to mid-February? How's February 13th looking for you?
That'll be good. Yeah.
Perfect. I will go ahead and send a calendar invite for the 13th, and I'll give you a call then.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Goodbye.
All right, y'all. Let's give Allie a round of applause, or chat. Y'all can give her some love in the chat as well. So good job, good job. All right, so here's how we're gonna do it. So chat, if you want to give your feedback, please go ahead. Allie was the first one doing this, so it's always the brave soul who did this. And then Tom, since you were on the call, do you want to give your feedback, and then I'll dive into mine?
I think Allie did very well. I think the intro in the beginning was a little rocky for me. And then you were able to kind of take that back on track. And the reason I say the beginning was rocky for me was just that immediately, one, this is just a personal preference for me. So this isn't that you did wrong. So take this with a grain of salt. The permission-based opener isn't always my favorite. Morgan probably caught that and was like, here it comes. You know, of more like, hey, but I liked how you ended it with a joke. You did give me a smile and say, hey, I won't make this painless for you. I just think, you know, asking permission if they picked up kind of an irrelevant, you know, moment of time and micro moment you could do differently.
Okay.
Two,
What would you use instead to open it up to maybe pitch a candidate? Because I know I'm kind of starting selling.
yeah, that was my second point. Is then right after that PBO, you went right into about this AE and just kind of made it about you, right? And immediately into this AE talent, which at that point, like I'm either hang up as you're pitching that, and I'm just like cool and I'm out, or you know, again, I'm like, yo, this isn't something I need, right? Like, what? Why are we talking about AEs right now? Like, you just called me out of nowhere. So I think it's more of, you know, trying to provoke their thought, get them to open up in conversation. Maybe, you know, you're looking at buyer intent data. So you're seeing like when they have job postings, right? So you could call and say, hey, Morgan, you know, I've seen that you have a job listing up here for AEs at the moment. What are, you know, what are you doing right now to how many applicants do you actually have in the portal right now? Something that gets them talking about it, or, you know, I've seen that you're looking for AEs around, you know, exceptional talent that has over a year of experience. That's got to be challenging for you. How many people do you have in the pipeline right now that even fit that requirement? Oh, we have 5.
How would you handle that right now? Because an objection I get a lot is right now, I'm sure as you all know, tech is a little oversaturated with talent. So a lot of times we have 500 applicants and it's like, well, probably 470 of them aren't necessarily meeting the requirement. So if I ask how many applicants they have, how would I handle that in a positive way?
Yeah. So if you're like, hey, how many applicants do you know, I see your job listing. You know, how many you've got in the funnel right now, Morgan? I've got like 480 right now. Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a very oversaturated market of what I've been hearing. What's your scorecard right now? How are you reading through that? Okay. Now you almost show them that people you have talked to are all the way here on letter Y, while they're on letter B. And they're like, wait, am I missing something? What do you mean the scorecard? What are you talking about? And it's like, oh, well, typically with people we work with, right, that's a huge volume. You got to have something in place, right, that kind of grades those people out or is scoring them. Your recruiters doing that? Hey, that's what we do at our company. So what we do in our software is out of that 500, we'd give you the top 12 based on some prompts and requirements you're looking for that we would drill and distill that down to 12 qualified people. I actually have 3 right now that I'm looking at that would probably be a really great fit for the team. Who could I get those in front of by chance, or what would you recommend they do to get on your radar? Right now you're just conversating and you're kind of helping them and you're being that consultant, and then you're kind of getting them to question their process. And they're like, am I doing something, Ali, wrong? Like, I don't know, where are we going with this? And you're like, well, that's why I called. That's the problem most recruiters are doing today. They are overwhelmed. They are missing even talent. Let me ask you this, Ali, how many people have you hired? And within 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you kind of found out, even after all that work, they still didn't work out. Yeah. Raise your hand. Have you dealt with that? I have. That's what I talked to, you know, Morgan over at AMP last week. That's what he was saying. And so that's what we do. If it's any priority for you, do you think we could maybe meet next week? I'd love to show you some profiles, or maybe even after this, I can send you 3 that you can look at the quality of. And if they even remotely look like something good enough, you know, let's meet on Thursday. We could talk about it.
Okay. And then one more question that I've kind of struggled with for the last couple of years is with software sales, it seems like it's always booking the meeting on the cold call. I've noticed if I don't get the job order on the first call, the likelihood of getting a second call is much harder. Do I try selling the meeting, or do I just ask 20 questions and try to get the job order in the first call? How would you handle that?
Your data is telling you to get that meeting, right? Ask for it. It should be on every call, right? If your data is showing you that you drop off after second, you got to go for the kill. Just in the way that you present that ask is what you want to work on, right? And practice and try to look at the calls you did win and get that meeting, what worked, what didn't, analyze it and try to replicate that sauce. But ask for that meeting and say, look, again, you want them to get to the point of the discussion where they're almost asking you, Ali, I really like what you got here. Like, what would be next steps here? How do I get on a call with you? What do you do? And you want them asking you almost. So you're not playing 20 questions per se or turning into an interrogation. Just you're asking relevant questions and building on the convo. And as soon as you see that small little sliver of hope where you have an in, go for it. Ask it. Hey, I don't want to take any more much of your time, Tom. I know I told you this would be super painless. I think there's something here for us. You don't have the scorecard. You've got a ton of applicants. I want to make your life easy. Does this sound fair
Okay.
to talk on Thursday real quick? I could have you in and out in maybe 20 minutes.
Okay.
I think,
I
yeah,
like
I
that
would
a lot.
say, overall, not to be like, hey, here's all this feedback. I'll end overwhelm me even more. But the thing is, I would say,
I
is
want
like,
all the feedback. That's the reason why I came on. Give it all to me.
So three things that I want everyone to pay attention to that Allie did really well is basically, best way to put it is, I'll put it like this way. She has range. So most people when they call, it's just like, hey, I'm Morgan, and it's just like, okay, this person's about to like pass out when they make this call. But when Allie has range, so she's able to go certain questions, you'll notice she emphasized certain points she was more drilled into. That's incredibly important. So when you're doing cold calls, you want that range and that pace, and that's what we just saw here, which was great. Also, as well, another good call out was, I actually liked how you said painless at the end of the intro.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I typically don't like 30 seconds. Some people might. It's fine, but like it's more of a preference than like something you shouldn't do. But I like how you said painless, because then that person's like, okay, like, what do you got, right? And then I think overall, even though he was bringing up like, I'm not really interested, you kept pacing and you did a good job. I think ultimately at the end of the day, someone put it in the chat, because I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. How are you able to review that many applicants? That's what I would say there. I think when someone's like, oh, I have 500, I'm set. It's like, but okay, but how are you actually assessing that? Like, you have that many, but like, what are you doing, right? And so I think that's probably my only piece is like, when you are running into those scenarios, let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's challenge that a little bit. And then once you find an indicator to push, then you push on it, and then you set up that meeting and you go from there. So hopefully all that information that we gave you was helpful.
That's super helpful. I'm excited to go finish out the second half of my cold calling today. So
there we go. There we go. Best of luck, Allie.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. So we have like 3 minutes left here. And so real quick, Tom, where can people find you? And then we'll wrap up maybe with one quick question, then we're out of here.
You can find me on good old LinkedIn. I love it there. That's where you could DM me a voice note. Happy to chat there. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Find my company at thesdlab.com if you're looking for top of funnel help and building out your engine, or some coaching for your team. But that's where you can find me.
This was an interesting one. Can you give us tips on emailing prospects that never answer the phone?
Don't do it.
Just don't email? You're done?
Good. An email, just keep it brief. 50 words, keep the conversation. People get so overwhelmed with, writing out the novel, pitch vomiting, all in the first email. Just talk to them like, you internally work with them. Shoot an email that's 50 words. Hey, saw you had over 500 applicants in the funnel right now. What are you doing to read through that right now, Morgan? And that's your email.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? You'll have more people respond in conversation versus this whole value prop ad. And so I just say for email, be human, be personal, and stop overthinking it. Just be you and write it, and try to be super brief and bring in your value prop when it's necessary.
Harder to answer this question with the context of how many paces you're doing, et cetera. So the way that I would answer this is that I would try to expand to as many channels as possible if the phone seems to not be working. So Tom said email. What are you doing with LinkedIn? What are you doing with, connections? Is an executive connected? Is there somebody else connected, right? Like, use your resources more. That's probably my recommendation. Or this is a lot. I got caught up in this. Maybe there's someone else in the organization you could go talk to.
Yeah.
Some people are so convinced, like, I gotta get Tom. Like, if I don't get, it's like, Bob is way easier to get to if you just would reach out to Bob. So don't get too caught up.
Multi-threading is slept on, man.
Yeah. Don't get too caught up in one person. Like, I actually had a deal that closed like a couple weeks ago, and I was too caught up on one person that I thought would be the person. And I talked to this other group of people, and they were like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," and ended up closing the deal. So I was like, I should have been doing that earlier. So it's just things like that. It's just things like that. Don't get too caught up in a person is my advice. But all right, y'all, we're at time. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. If you want it again, let us know. You can email the Cognizant team for like, I want to run this back. Like, let us know. But we really appreciate y'all asking some great questions. If we didn't get to your question, I'm sorry. We only have an hour, so we can't get everything. But if you do have any follow-up, feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will talk to you all soon. Cheers.